Welcome to another Online Personals Watch CEO interview. I'm joined by Ian Bell today, who's the CEO of Tingle, which is a wonderful mobile app. Ian, thank you for taking the time.
Thanks for having me.
So what inspired you to start Tingle?
I had a lot of personal experiences with online dating, having tried it for a few years. I come from a background of building communication services, and so thoughts like presence and messaging and voice communication over the internet, and all of these ideas were very near and dear to my heart. We actually had a company 6 years ago, 7 years ago, that was building feature-rich communication services for feature phones. And I think what we lacked in that community, in that particular business, was a community. And so online dating is a community. It needs to be structured and curated like a community. And so I've always been interested in the industry.
How many members are you at?
Lots.
Roughly. Over.
Tens of thousands.
Okay, and what's prevented you from growing faster?
Well, actually, we haven't really begun to market aggressively in the U.S. yet. It's taken us quite a bit of time to perfect the product and to get it to a level of polish where we feel confident in taking it forward. So we've actually held back a lot of our efforts outside of specific test markets like LA and Vancouver and Toronto. I think we're a watch this space for details application for now.
So you're at the stage, you've got a nice app.
Mm-hmm.
You're ready to roll. What would you do differently if you had to do it all again? In terms of the build?
In terms of the build. Well, it's unfair to be in 2012 looking at me in 2010, and because there's a lot of technologies we can leverage now which weren't available in 2010. So I guess if there were one thing that I would have done, maybe that was wait until the technologies had matured. But we certainly paid a price in terms of engineering investment, in terms of addressing gaps that existed within, for example, the iOS ecosystem, or gaps that existed in billing and gaps that existed in other places, which are now far easier to surmount.
What was the biggest challenge that would have been fixed if you'd done it 6 months ago? In terms of the development in the environment?
Very, very subtle things in iOS have been problematic and solved in more recent builds of iOS. So a good example is linking to states within applications, which is actually a very subtle and discrete feature that has really dramatic effect on any notification-based services like us. And so what we did was build all of this incredible state tracking technology, which was completely unnecessary, but actually may be useful down the road when we go to other platforms like BlackBerry and Android.
So tell me, state tracking, how do you mean? What does that look like from the user perspective?
When you send a notification to a user, our application actually sends a lot of notifications to users every day about various things that are happening. So without some sort of state tracking or the ability to link to a state within the app, you cannot convey what, you can't determine what action the user is responding to. So if I've got 6 pending notifications on my iPhone, and I react to those and I wake the app has to figure out why I did that and what I'm responding to. And that technology wasn't supplied by Apple until probably just pre-iOS 5, I think. And so we were building with the assumption that Apple wasn't going to solve that problem. We solved it ourselves, spent a lot of money to do it, and here we are. Hopefully we can leverage that investment in other technologies and other platforms.
And what would be a more recent problem that you think Apple would fix? And let me just back up a second. What platforms are you running on right now? You've got the app on
iOS. Anything iOS. iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch.
You've not done Android yet?
Nope.
Why?
We didn't mature our API until about February timeframe, so the Android project's just about to kick off.
Gotcha. Do you want to do Android?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wish you didn't have to, but life's not perfect.
Have you thought about doing? What's your thoughts on HTML5 apps?
Yeah, it's obviously I would love to be able to leverage JavaScript and HTML5 on mobile devices for the richness of customer experience that I think we intend to be known for and are already known for. You just can't get there. Particularly, it's very hard to do, not impossible, but very hard to do voice over IP and some of the other, push-based technologies that we're doing in a non-native environment. And I find as a general observation, when I look at technologies like PhoneGap, some of the developers of whom are friends of mine, I find that there's a compromise and there's a real tension between appearing to be a native app and delivering a user experience that's familiar and being cross-platform and all that stuff. And I'm not willing to compromise the experience.
Interesting. Now, LinkedIn, for example, recently LinkedIn actually announced that they'd built their app on HTML5. So
Yeah.
why is HTML5 not such a good fit for the iDating sphere?
Well, actually, for the vast majority of iDating apps that I've seen and websites that I've seen, they all should be HTML5, absolutely. For our app, which I think is pretty unique in the industry, I just don't see how it's feasible for us to sustain some of the things that give us a competitive advantage and use a generic cross-platform tool like PhoneGap or HTML5 itself. I
What's
wish
the
it
most?
wasn't. I wish that wasn't the case.
So tell us more about Tingle. What's the most unique couple of features?
Well, Tingle's the only app I'm aware of in the straight dating market that lets people talk to each other on the phone, completely anonymously and privately. That's one of our fun features. I think the effect of that is that it allows people to communicate further into the courtship, if you will, as they're getting to know one another within our platform. I think what you find is that the vast majority of apps and dating sites are used strictly for discovery, and the conversation very quickly moves off of that platform onto Hotmail or Gmail or email and regular phone lines and phone numbers or BlackBerry Messenger. And so that really restricts the opportunity that online dating businesses have to monetize their customer base. And it's one of the reasons why it's so easy for users to churn quite quickly off of the service. So by integrating the voice communications component, you're taking advantage of a natural predisposition of women not to want to give total strangers their phone number. And you're making the communication permission function revocable. So that's why we feel, and some studies we've done have borne this out, that has a huge amount of resonance with the female population. So that's one feature.
Can I just hold there? Because
Yeah.
before we just get into this a little bit further, because it's killing me. Why aren't the apps offering this essential service? Why not? What's the difficulty? Why is it so difficult?
Well, two things. The technology is kind of hard to do, right?
Why?
And there aren't a lot of shortcuts there.
You've built voice over IP into the app, right? I mean, why is it so
Yes.
difficult?
The latency issues are difficult to contend with. There's lots of technological gotchas. Anyone who's from, I come from the voice over IP industry. I'm, one of the innovators that got that technology off the ground when I was working at Cisco in the 90s. So I'm quite aware of all the pitfalls that exist as you trundle through a project of that nature, and it's not something I'd advise for the non-expert to undertake. The second thing is actually more social. And so I don't think that most dating services, sites, apps, whatever, are designed to confront the spam issue. And the spam issue is simply that Guys buy unlimited subscriptions, which lets them send as many messages or do as many actions as they want, and that consequently means that women are on the receiving end of buckets of messages every single day, and so there's a very, very poor signal to noise ratio on online dating networks, particularly from the position of women. If you were just to layer voice communication on top of that, then you're inviting phone calls at random hours of the day, perhaps dozens of phone calls from complete strangers every single day. And so you're creating a social problem that actually increases churn over and above what people are normally able to contend with. And the same is true of any mobile app. So I think we see higher churn on mobile apps in general simply because I can avoid a web-based dating site because it's tied to my browser or my desktop computer, and the second I close that computer or log off of that site, I'm theoretically no longer being engaged by it. So I can turn it off and I can build walls around it in my life. With a mobile app where it's pinging your phone with notifications every time you get an incoming message, you got a real problem, right? If I'm sitting in a meeting and 15 guys are trying to flirt with me to see if I want to hook up tonight, it's kind of embarrassing, and it's a disruption. So I think that's one of the things that's driving women away. So the second piece is, and actually this contributes to one of the other things that make us unique, is we've worked really hard on that signal to noise ratio so that we don't drive away the people you most want to be on your service, those being attractive and interesting women. And so we've worked really hard on technologies and systems that we've developed to condition that signal to noise ratio, so that when you add the calling feature and other features down the road, you're not just creating more opportunity for disturbance and disruption.
How does the handshake work when a guy wants to talk to a woman?
It's actually not rocket science, right? But it's a permission system, basically. If I see a woman I like, I send her a wink. I can't send her a message or call her. If she accepts my wink or winks back, then we're connected. And for the duration that we remain connected, we can talk and get to know each other. And, hey, if we go out on a date and things don't work out, she can just block me. And there's no social consequences to her having revoked that communication permission, right?
Can she revoke certain forms of communication, or is it a hard stop?
It's a hard stop right now. We'll see if there are nuances of communication that people want to revoke or gradually permit. I think actually the better argument is that women may not want you to call them until they've talked to you via text message a little bit. So this gradual permission and then revocation might be a model we want to embrace, but we'll see. We'll see when we have 100,000 users pinging away at each other.
So you've got the voice piece, which is fantastic. Did you build this in-house with your own people? Say in-house. Did you build it with your own people, or did you use an entirely third-party service?
We've leveraged a mix of third-party and in-house technologies.
Yeah.
As you know, I come from the industry, so I have lots of friends to lean on. And so, without spending an arm and a leg building something completely proprietary, we've kind of got some economics of scale from some friends and developed some. Actually, we've contributed some technology to their overall technology pool as well. So it was really a joint effort.
So I want to build a mobile dating app, let's say.
Good luck.
I don't include voice over IP. I don't include voice, let's say.
Okay, easier.
What am I going to spend? What should I be budgeting?
I don't know. I've seen a pretty wide array of expenditures. I can tell you that to build what we've built with voice over IP and everything else was well north of $1 million.
Wow.
And part of that was actually, I think the greater part of our expenditure is actually on the systems. Yeah. And particularly, completely redesigning the business model and redesigning the functional service model. This is not for the faint of heart, this endeavor, right? So, but I would suggest that if you wanted to build a lightweight hookup app, it's the kind of thing that 2 or 3 guys with some inspiration could do in 2 to 3 months. But I'm not sure where that goes, right?
So 40 grand, 30 grand
Yeah, and
on the
yeah,
inside.
eat and yeah,
So
yeah.
basically 30 grand to $1 million.
Yeah.
Right?
You can narrow that with some effort, I'm sure. But yeah, 30 grand to a million. Honey, I want to buy a car. How much do you want me to spend? 30 grand to a million. Sure.
Right. So what tech is Tingle built on?
Well, Tingle's backend is mostly Rails and some bigger iron software on the server side. And obviously the client stuff is native Objective-C right now on iOS, and will be native on Android, and unfortunately native on BlackBerry if they don't die first.
So I'm trying to get a handle on all the tech. What do you have on the back end server side? You say bigger iron. What?
Just some C++ and stuff, just
Okay.
to help scale more economically.
If you had to build it again, would you change that?
Not at all.
All right.
Actually, the one thing worthy of consideration is Ruby on Rails.
Yeah.
Um, it's a very much a moving target, and I think when we started out in 2010, uh, hiring Rails guys was hard, but weeding talented guys from less talented guys was actually not very difficult. So what's more interesting? So actually, in many respects, I was agnostic about what our server-side platform looked like, but I just figured Rails was a great filter because I wouldn't have to interview as many PHP guys. Um, but there are benefits to PHP as well, and so I think it's a real trade-off between a good Symfony-based PHP deployment and Ruby on Rails. One of my favorites, and I always cite this, and my team are very tired of me saying this, is that the real benefit of PHP would have been integration with WordPress, which is what we use for the content on our website. And so it would have been far easier for us to integrate functions that connect back to the Tingle application within a WordPress site if we'd just gone with PHP. But we worked around it.
What other technologies did you consider and reject, and why did they not make the cut?
We would never go .NET because I like having all my hair. Um, we would never, I mean, anything outside of the LAMP structure is really hard to justify these days, right? The economics of scale, the availability of hosting providers, we don't own any servers. We actually don't have a single server. We had a Mac Mini that we were using for testing, and I just sold it, so we didn't need it. So we basically are a bunch of guys with laptops and hosted services. And at the moment, we spend a lot less than $500 a month to host tens of thousands of users, which is awesome economics. Right?
Who do you use for hosting?
So we use a mixture of third-party services. Everything we use is VPS, and so we have a VPS service with Linode. We use some other facilities from Amazon, EC2, and AWS.
Gotcha. So that's Linode.
Perfect.
And
.com.
you mentioned C2?
I'll have to give you my referral code.
The final one, though, C2, you said?
EC2 and AWS.
Oh, EC2, of course. Gotcha. Okay. How about the money part? How are you making money?
We're generating a fairly healthy trickle of revenue just from our open beta users. And these are people purchasing prepaid credits, which they then use to talk to one another.
So you're credit-based, it's not monthly?
It's not subscription, and it's not pure advertising.
How do you feel about
And
paying Apple 30%?
look, I'd rather not, because then my gross operating margin would be 98%. But Apple does us a lot of favors, so for now I'm content to let them take their cut. There are ways to optimize that down the road, and certainly when we're on Android, the economics actually look significantly better on that platform. But look, it is what it is. They're the only game in town, and so you don't have a choice. So I prefer to focus on things of greater near-term affectability.
How will you play it on Android?
We'll probably handle transactions on our own and not use the Android payment process. We actually have set that up. We set that up a long time ago with optimal payments and integrated our technologies, and so it's locked and loaded and ready the second we're up on that platform.
And what do Android use? What do they charge for their
The
hardware?
Android App Store.
Yeah,
I haven't specifically looked into it, but it's less than Apple.
gotcha. Which is fine if they're referring you clients.
Yeah, that'd be great, right? And Apple is referring us clients, so I mean, not to be hard on them, but we do get discovered in the App Store quite a bit.
How have you handled the geolocation?
How do we handle location?
Hmm.
Yeah, so this was one of my other observations about the first generation of hookup apps, if you will, that came out in the store. Um, they're very unsophisticated and they're largely derivative of the gay dating apps that came along. And when we talked to women and showed them some of those apps like Grindr, etc., which work great in gay, and there's no reason to disparage the success of those applications in the gay market, but they do not apply one for one to the straight market. So when you show women, a map that features all the women around you that you might want to hook up with, that scares the crap out of them, right? And that's kind of the last thing you want. And God forbid you're the best looking woman within radius of a preponderance of men. God forbid you're the best looking woman who's like within a kilometer of Wall Street, because you're probably getting way more messages than you could possibly handle. So anyway, obviously we determined very early on that's not the solution, and actually it wasn't until this summer that we started really getting some traction around a better way to do it. So when you boil it down, the thing that's really interesting for both men and women about location-based discovery is serendipity, right? And serendipity isn't based so much on specific location of a person. So it doesn't matter if a woman is in a coffee shop or in a restaurant that I'm nearby to. What matters is that she's nearby. So if a woman's within 30 meters of me or 100 meters of me, and if that's happening a lot, then that's kind of interesting to me, because now I know that this woman, lives similarly to me and is obviously near to me fairly often. So we created a notification-based, location-based discovery tool. We call it Radar. We may have to rename it because everybody else is calling their location-based discovery tool Radar. But what Radar does in our context is it passively tracks location updates from within the operating system. As you know, iPhone updates location to any apps that care to listen to it very frequently. And then we pass that through a matching engine. And when we find people who are near to one another, then we pass that through the search filters that they have established on our site. And if you're looking for a 5'10" blonde female, and the female's looking for a guy who lives in Malta, then we're going to match you up and send a notification to both of you that, hey, Sheila is 100 meters away from you. Now, you can't really use that information to stalk her or to do anything that might make her uncomfortable. But it is relevant information. It's a great way to discover each other. And and here's what we find. Even if you ignore that first notification, it sticks in your head, and if she works near you, where you work, that notification will happen a few times, and that becomes a shared context, and that's one of the best ways to meet someone in the real world. So we establish that shared context, and then maybe on the third notification or the second notification, you actually get up the fortitude to send her a wink, and from there you get to move forward. So I think that's our most innovative technology. We're patenting that stuff, and I think that's by far one of the most interesting things about us from a consumer perspective. So that technology is making hundreds of introductions per day in LA and in Vancouver. Not all those introductions lead to a wink right away, but we're seeing that connections are getting established.
What's a wink cost? Or shall I say 100
A
winks?
wink is free. A wink is free. Winks are always free.
And the what is paid then? Where do you put the pay line?
Calls and messages are paid.
Got it. And what does it cost?
It's it's fairly high, but it's highly fungible because you can actually earn the credits that you expend when you call and text people by doing things that are additive to our community. So, for example, if you're uploading photos, if you're checking in a lot, we essentially pay you for that, and then you expend those credits. So, it's really hard to translate that to a dollar equivalent, but our hardline exchange rate is something on the order of uh, about 150 credits to a dollar. But probably by the time this airs, that'll have changed and become even more fungible.
Have you thought about changing it based on the demographic that you need? So people that you really need, you charge less?
The Chick Chat free model is something we're very cognizant of, and that's a major driver for the industry. But interestingly, when we did a lot of primary research on the marketplace, we discovered that women who become hunters on online dating network, in other words, women who actually buy subscriptions and then go after the guys that they're most interested in, are generally a lot happier with their experience online. And so we wanted to. That's why we have this earned credit system, right? So. Um, in our model, it's free to reply to a call or a message from another person. And obviously, we have this ability to earn credits for being an extrovert, basically, and inviting your friends and doing other things. So it is very, very feasible that a woman who's actively engaged with our community would never have to pay.
Have you thought about incentivizing replies?
Yeah, yes. We think about it a lot. We talk about it a lot. Not ready to go there quite yet because it's a little like prostitution, right? It's allegorical, and we definitely don't want to encourage those types of users in our community.
So how did you seed the community? How did you get it to the first 10,000 users?
Uh, uh, there's some secret sauce in there, but in essence, we host parties, and a party in a city like LA will drive between 2,500 and 5,000 signups if executed well.
Nightclub
Yeah.
parties?
What's that?
Nightclub parties, then?
Usually, yeah, usually.
Do you shoot for early sets, so 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock, or do you do 10 o'clock onwards?
We take over a club for an entire night, and we invite people, and we create some great reasons for them to come. And we actually have some technological integration between our community and what happens in the club. So there's a nice mix of the virtual and the real world there. And actually, that goes right to the DNA of Tingle. If you look at our little 30-second teaser video that we did last year, we're really trying to create this interplay between real world social discovery and online social discovery, and that's one of the most enticing things about what we're doing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
The
Well,
speed
for me,
dating.
I think you and I talked about this maybe a year ago. One of the things that inspired this for me was uh, the whole two-thing scandal. I don't know if you read about it, but during those years, like 2005, 2006, I was traveling to Europe a lot, and I happened to be reading The Guardian, and there was an article about people discovering each other via Bluetooth. Of course, in those days, Bluetooth had just come out on Nokia and Sony Ericsson phones, and you could name your phone by your first name. And so I'm standing, having just read this article, I'm standing at a bar in Soho, and I was single back then, and I guess I must have had Bluetooth on because I had my headset or whatever with me, and all of a sudden I start getting messages from a total stranger who's nearby. Turned out to be a guy, which is a foreshadowing of other technologies, but just the thought that you can be just passively going about your day and meet someone, that's super enticing, right? And that's the kind of thing that draws people in and gets them excited about a technology. And so for me, that really germinated the fact that my whole goal to combine, the ability to have a phone conversation with that profile that you're looking at online had to be on a mobile device. Absolutely had to be. And so, yeah.
What do you do in the nightclub then? How do you bring the tech world into the nightclub.
You have to come to the party and see.
I will. That sounds good. Where's the next one?
Our next one's probably in LA in the summer. Yeah.
Well, cool. There's a
Probably have
conference there
parties in
too.
LA,
So
New York. Sorry?
maybe in June, late June.
Possibly. We want actual single people to come, though, not online dating business industry experts. But so we're going to do some parties this summer. Probably not New York until September because everybody's out in the Hamptons. But so Miami, New York, Toronto again, Calgary, believe it or not, and LA are high on our list.
So what's your hurdle for seeding per new member? What are you willing to spend on a new member?
Not more than $7,
Good. Okay.
and we never have.
And once you're at critical mass and converting, what's your hurdle rate for the conversions and the CPA once you've got over? Well, now you're over 10,000.
So actually, there's nothing about our app at the moment that's inherently viral. It's strict old school viral. It's word of mouth is how we're getting vast majority of our users at the moment. In fact, for the last 2 months, we haven't been advertising at all. We've been very focused on moving the business forward on the technology and business side. The virality kicking in will have a nice effect, I think, on our overall CPA. But my rule of thumb is I won't spend more than $7. In general, we're spending between $4 and $5. In some cases, for a radio campaign, for example, that was our maximum. It was $7. And so I think that a big reason why we made this effort to be different and to position ourselves as different is because I think there's a significant amount of fatigue with the online dating business in general among the populace. You're now at a point where basically greater than 50% of people who are single have tried online dating at one point or another. So you don't have to explain to them what the benefit and the features of online dating are. They get it, right? What you now have to show them is that there's something new and that there's something fresh and there's something more engaging. And so a huge price of our customer acquisition is actually engineering and product management. And so, we aren't going to make a substantial push until we have really locked down all the nails on having that feature, that service that's really, really differentiated from the rest of the crowd. And we're almost there, so watch out.
Virality, super important, right? What's the keys?
Well, the key is for me, the key is, and this has been the template for my entire career, the key is to show how you're different from everything else that's out there in a consumer perspective, and then show how you're going to disrupt the industry either by your business model, or maybe it's just your price, or maybe it's just a whole new way of looking at the industry. And those are the attributes that really help you separate yourself from the pack when you have a lot of competitors. The interesting thing that I find now is that on the earned media side, journalists are getting hit every day by another dating site. I can't tell you how many times my investors have emailed me a link to some other dating site that's launching that I've never heard of and probably won't again. And so journalists are probably getting this tenfold. As a result, they won't look at your pitch until you have established some credibility around your brand and around your community. So whether that's going off and somehow magically getting, 100,000 users or 50,000 users, or whatever the threshold is, or that's having some huge industry partner on board, or having, marquee investors or marquee founders, there's got to be some hook that helps a lazy and overwhelmed journalist to decide why they should invest an hour or two writing an article about you and putting it on their blog. And that's just that's par for the course, right? You're not going to change that. So for us, we're doing all those things and we're locking down all those things, and then you'll see a big splash.
Well, a big hook in your case is you got a stellar name.
Yeah, the brand's okay. I actually wasn't that comfortable with it at first, but I've gotten there.
Why?
And we've gotten some pushback from folks who think that a tingle is a negative connotation. But for me, it was always about the tingle, the butterflies in your stomach. And I recall this from going on so many blind dates from online dating experiences. You get once in a while that butterfly in your stomach, and that's as a dater, as a single person, that's the juice. That's what you're going for. So we really wanted to invoke that. And as it happened, we knew the owners of the domain name, and so it was a very easy discussion to get a hold of tingle.com. And as you know, for online dating, getting your brand established is one of the hardest parts.
So you licensed the name or bought it?
Yeah, we bought it. Yeah, we bought it, and we're in the process of trademarking it. And the great thing about it is the same owner has had the domain name for, I think it was 11 years prior to us activating it. And so there's very little Google juice around Tingle outside of the stuff that we've created so far. So we own that word on the internet. It's great.
So let's talk about growth. If you had 200 grand to spend and you had to spend it next week, where would you put it?
Well, I mean, it's more science than art, right? At the moment, I would just throw it at my most effective third-party lead generation tool, which right now probably looks like Facebook. We've seen some other guys driving up the price once in a while on Facebook. That tends to be seasonal, but we haven't spent more than about $4 to get a user on Facebook, so that's been nice. And the targeting, and all the residual benefits of getting a customer via Facebook are great. Right?
It's nice as one platform that's got decent volume. Have you tried any of the affiliate networks?
Actually, we haven't. We haven't done any affiliate. We have a project to get that going, but it's just not our focus at the moment. We will get there. But I have some concerns about the quality levels of affiliate leads, and so I'm going to move pretty cautiously in that direction.
Do you think there would be an internet dating site, Tingle.com, or is it always going to be a mobile app?
Always mobile, never web.
Why?
Well, so I mean, part of the advantage, so obviously there's enormous consumer interest around mobile, so that's great. Positioning as a mobile-only app, that's great. Helps us capitalize on that. If we start having users whose predominant experience with Tingle is via a web browser, then it becomes more difficult to be a real-time communications platform. Because, of course, like I said earlier, when you close your laptop or walk away from your web browser, all of a sudden you're no longer connected to the vast majority of online dating experiences. And we want you to feel connected all the time. And so, as an example, our users in LA access Tingle an average, and this is an average, and this actually includes, some users that have had relationships and walked away from us in the past couple of months. Our average number of accesses per day is 8. So if you can imagine, I don't think I access Facebook 8 times a day. But someone on an online dating network engaging with us that actively, so that means they're sending messages, responding to messages, very short sessions in general. Few of those sessions are actually browses or searches. Most of them are people talking back and forth and having phone calls and all that other stuff. So that being the case, that's the real selling reason for not having a web browser. So the second you start having a web browser, the ability to do all that stuff goes away pretty fast. There's a lot of dating sites over the past 6 or 7 years that deployed instant messaging, and most of them spent quite a bit of money to do that. And what I found as an online dating user was that the vast majority of women turned off or ignored that function, right? Because it's interrupt driven, it's disruptive, and of course they had no signal noise filters to inhibit that from being a problem.
Are there any user behaviors that have surprised you as you've observed your membership?
Well, actually, the biggest thing is location, right? I mean, so the number of people who, if you think about a city like LA, where we have, compared to the size of the city, a very small community of people, less than 10,000 users. The fact that we're making hundreds of location-based invitations per day is amazing. In a city that size, especially Manhattan, you might not surprise me, but LA is an enormous city, and we've got I know that we've got users who live, way out in Reseda and way down in Orange County, and somehow they all combine to create these hundreds of meetings per day, virtual meetings per day. So the proximity of people and the tendency for people to pass nearby each other, that's actually really inspiring, not just for Tingle, but just for, single people in general. You've got this opportunity for spontaneity all around you, and the opportunity to meet people. That's pretty cool, right? And I never would have thought that. I would think, my prediction was, for every 5,000 people in an average city like Vancouver, you might have 100 of those a day. But even with when we got going in Vancouver with 3,000 users, we're doing that a couple hundred times a day, right? It's ridiculous, and it's really cool. It's really inspiring. So it just shows that we're people who move around, right? And it's amazing how often we come potentially into contact with one another.
It also shows that people want mobile, and that's the future of internet dating. Lose the internet.
Yep, and Marcus Friend has said exactly that, right? But I think the impact of mobile is a lot more cutting than most people think at the moment. Marcus seems to get it, right? He said that 60-70% of his users are going to be mobile by the end of 2012. And essentially he said that his business model is invalid in that sphere, so he's got to engineer his way out of it. But I think that the structural implications to the very design of the business model and the very design of the service model are really dramatic. So I don't think it would be a fair expectation that just because someone's dominant as a web-based dating company, that they're going to make that transition successfully. And so I think we're poised for over the next couple of years a very significant moment of change, where we separate the men from the boys or the women from the girls in this industry. And it's not just going to be a contest of who can raise the most money and who can get out there as quickly as possible, or who already has as much money. So it's actually and we were talking about discouraging other people from having dating startups, but there will be a significant number of exits in this category to large players who are too fat to move fast, from small players who are nimble, who have the right business structure and business model, and who've executed aggressively against customer acquisition and unique features. Hopefully that's us, although we don't want to sell.
I was just going to ask you that. You don't want to sell, but everything's there always for sale.
Well, I mean, and I have shareholders and directors to answer to. So, but my personal tendency is to want to. I've always built businesses on the internet that made money one way or the other. I'm not one of those guys who's good at building free services that monetize through advertising, for example. This is just my personality is to build a successful business, and if we hit all our targets, then why would we sell? We'll be rolling millions of dollars a month, and we'll be in a good position to keep executing against the vision, which I assure you is far beyond what you might see 6 months from now with Tingle.
If you were buying and you could acquire any 3 mobile dating companies, which 3 would you choose?
Well, I can answer that unfairly, which is to say, now is not the right time to buy a mobile dating company for most major players, because you want to shake it out and see who can execute best, right? Obviously the best mobile dating companies are the guys who've been established the longest, which are all gay dating apps. So obviously, if I was working at Match.com, I'd be going after Grindr pretty aggressively. But again, I think if you talk to Joel, he probably doesn't want to sell, right? And he probably won't.
Who else do you think has done a really good job with a mobile dating service?
That's hard to say. In the gay market, I think the service model is well established and guys have done well. In the straight market, I think the straight market in mobile dating right now there's obviously a huge amount of interest in the category and the consumer base, but the straight market for the app space is basically herding people to a cliff, right? Because you're capitalizing on this interest and getting them to sign up for these apps, and then, oh, this app is awful, and they're gone within days. And it's literally that stark, right? There's a lot of guys out there making noise, and a lot of guys quoting high download numbers. The numbers that matter are engagement, right? And at the risk of sounding immodest, I would say that we have probably in the top 5 most engaging dating apps in the marketplace. So I guess top of my list of companies to go after would be us. But I think it's too early for the straight dating category in general.
Opportunity abounds. So,
Yep.
Ian Bell, you are the CEO and founder of Tingle.com and the Tingle app. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mark.